Winter 1935. State tests again. Miss Freeland said our grade topped the entire state of Oklahoma on the state tests again, 24 points higher than the state average. Wish I could run home and tell Ma and see her nod and hear her say, "I knew you could." It would be enough. January 1935. Christmas dinner without the cranberry sauce. Miss Freeland was my Ma at the school Christmas dinner. I thought I'd be the only one without a real Ma, but 2 other motherless girls came. We served turkey, chestnut dressing, sweet potatoes, and brown gravy. Made it all ourselves, and it came out pretty good. Better than the Christmas dinner I made for my father at home, where we sat at the table, silent, just the 2 of us. Being there without Ma, without the baby, wouldn't have been so bad if I just remembered the cranberry sauce. My father loved Ma's special cranberry sauce, but she never showed me how to make it. January 1935. Driving the cows. Dust piles up like snow across the prairie, dunes leaning against fences, mountains of dust pushing over barns. Joe DeLaFleur can't afford to feed his cows, can't afford to sell them. County Agent Dewey comes, takes the cows behind the barn, and shoots them. Too hard to watch their lungs clog with dust, like our chickens, suffocated. Better to let the government take them than suffer the sight of their bony hides sinking down into the earth. Joe DeLaFleur rides the range. Come spring, he'll gather Russian thistle, pulling the plant while it's still green and young, before the prickles form, before it breaks free to tumble across the plains. He gathers thistle to feed what's left of his cattle, his bone-thin cattle he drives away from the dried-up Beaver River to where the Cimarron still runs, pushing the herd across the breaks, where there might last another week, maybe 2, until it rains. January 1935. First rain. Sunday night, I stretch my legs in my iron bed under the roof. I place a wet cloth over my nose to keep from breathing dust and wipe the grime tracings from around my mouth and shiver, thinking of Ma. I am kept company by the sound of my heart drumming. Restless, I tingle in the dusty sheets, sending the sand flying, cursing the grit against my skin, between my teeth, under my lids, swearing I'll leave this forsaken place. I hear the first drops. Like the tapping of a stranger at the door of a dream, the rain changes everything. It strokes the roof, streaking the dusty tin, ponging, a concert of rain notes, spilling from gutters, gushing from gullies, soaking into the thirsty earth outside. Monday morning dawns, cloaked in mist. I button into my dress, slip on my sweater, and push my way off the porch, striking my face into the fog, into the moist skin of the fog. The sound of dripping surrounds me as I walk to town. Soaked to my underwear, I can't bear to go through the schoolhouse door. I want only to stand in the rain. Monday afternoon, Joe DeLaFleur brushes mud from his horse. Mr. Kincannon hires my father to pull his olds out of the muck on Route 64. And later, when the clouds lift, the farmers, surveying their fields, nod their heads as the frail stalks revive. Everyone, everything grateful for this moment, free of the weight of the dust. January 1935. Hayden P. Nye. Hayden P. Nye died this week. I knew him to wave. He liked the way I played piano. The newspaper said when Hayden first came, he could see only grass and wild horses and wolves roaming. Then folks moved in and sod got busted and bushels of wheat turned the plains to gold, and Hayden P. Nye grabbed the Oklahoma Panhandle in his fist and held on. By the time the railroad came in on land, Hayden sold them. The buffalo and the wild horses had gone. Some years, Hayden Nye saw the sun dry up his crop, saw the grasshoppers chew it down, but then came years of rain and the wheat thrived, and his pockets filled, and his big laugh came easy. They buried Hayden Nye on his land, busted more sod to lay down his bones. Will they sow wheat on his grave, where the buffalo once grazed? January 1935. Scrubbing up dust. Walking past the Crystal Hotel, I saw Jim Martin down on his knees. He was scraping up mud that had dried to crust after the rain mixed with dust Sunday last. When I got home, I took a good look at the steps and the porch and the windows. I saw them with Ma's eyes and thought about how she'd been haunting me. I thought about Ma, who would have washed clothes, beaten furniture, aired rugs, scrubbed floors, down on her knees, brush in hand, breaking that mud like the farmers break sod, always watching over her shoulder for the next duster to roll in. My stubborn Ma, she'd be doing it all with my brother Franklin to tend to. She never could stand a mess. My father doesn't notice the dried mud. At least he never tells me. Not that he tells me much of anything these days. With Ma gone, if the mud's to be busted, the job falls to me. It isn't the work I hate, the knuckle-breaking work of beating mud out of every blessed thing, but every day my fingers and hands ache so bad. I think I should just let them rest, let the dust rest, let the world rest. But I can't leave it rest on account of Ma haunting. January 1935, outlined by dust. My father stares at me while I sit across from him at the table, while I wash dishes in the basin, my back to him, the picked and festered bits of my hands in agony. He stares at me as I empty the wash water at the roots of Ma's apple trees. He spends long days digging for the electric train folks when they can use him, or working here, nursing along the wheat, what there is of it, or digging the pond. He sings sometimes under his breath, even now, even after so much sorrow. He sings a man's song, deep with what has happened to us. It doesn't swing lightly the way Ma's voice did, the way Miss Friedland's voice does, the way Mad Dog sings. My father's voice starts and stops, like a car short of gas, like an engine choked with dust, but then he clears his throat and starts the song up again. He rubs his eyes the way I do, with his palms out. Ma never did that. And he wipes the milk from his upper lip same as me, with his thumb and forefinger. Ma never did that either. We don't talk much. My father never was a talker. Ma's dying hasn't changed that. I guess he gets the sound out of him with the song he sings. I can't help thinking how it is for him without Ma. Waking up alone, only his shape left in the bed, outlined by dust. He always smelled a little like her first thing in the morning, when he left her in bed and went out to do the milking. She'd scuff into the kitchen a few minutes later, bleary-eyed, to start breakfast. I don't think she was ever really meant for farm life. I think once she had bigger dreams, but she made herself over to fit my father. Now he smells of dust and coffee, tobacco and cows. None of the musky woman smell left. That was Ma. He stares at me. Maybe he is looking for Ma. He won't find her. I look like him. I stand like him. I walk across the kitchen floor with that long-legged walk of his. I can't make myself over the way Ma did. And yet, if I could look in the mirror and see her in my face, if I could somehow know that Ma and baby Franklin lived on in me, but it can't be. I'm my father's daughter. January 1935, the President's Ball. All across the land, couples dancing arm in arm, hand in hand, at the birthday ball. My father puts on his best overalls. I wear my Sunday dress, the one with the white collar, and we walk to town to the Legion Hall and join the dance. Our feet flying, me and my father, on the wooden floor whirling to Arlie Wanderdale and the Black Mesa Boys. Till 10, when Arlie stands up from the piano to announce we raised $33 for infantile paralysis, a little better than last year. And I remember last year when Ma was alive and we were crazy excited about the baby coming. And I played at this same party, Roosevelt and Joyce City in Arlie. Tonight, for a little while in the bright hall, folks were almost free of dust, almost free of debt, almost free of fields of withered wheat. Most of the night, I think I smiled, and twice my father laughed. Imagine. January 1935, lunch. No one's going hungry at school today. The government sent canned meat, rice, potatoes. The bakery sent loaves of bread, and Scotty Moore, George Nail, and Willie Harkins brought in milk, fresh, creamy milk straight from their farms. Real lunch and then stomachs full and feeling fine for classes in the afternoon. The little ones drank themselves into white mustaches. They ate and ate until pushing back from their desks, their stomachs round, they swore they'd never eat again. The older girls, Elizabeth and Lorraine, helped Miss Friedland cook, and Hillary and I, we served and washed, our ears ringing with the sound of satisfied children. February 1935. Guests. In our classroom this morning, we came in to find a family no one knew. They were shy, a little frightened, embarrassed. A man and his wife, pretty far along with a baby coming, 2 little kids, and a grandma. They'd moved into our classroom during the night. An iron bed and some pasteboard boxes. That's all they had. They'd cleaned the room first and arranged it, making it a private place for themselves. I'm on the look for a job, the man said. The dust blew so mean last night I thought to shelter my family here a while. The two little kids turned their big eyes from Miss Freeland back to their father. I can't have my wife sleeping in the cold truck, not now, not with the baby coming so soon. Miss Freeland said they could stay as long as they wanted. February 1935. Family School. Every day we bring fixings for soup and put a big pot on to simmer. We share it at lunch with our guests, the family of migrants who have moved out from dust and depression and moved into our classroom. We are careful to take only so much to eat, making sure there's enough soup left in the pot for their supper. Some of us bring in toys and clothes for the children. I found a few things of my brother's and brought them to school. Little feed sack nighties, so small, so full of hope. Franklin never wore one of the nighties Mom made him, except the one we buried him in. The man, Betty Williams, helps out around the school, fixing windows and doors and the bad spot on the steps, cleaning up the schoolyard so it never looks so good. The grandma takes care of the children, bringing them out when the dust isn't blowing, letting them chase tumbleweeds across the field behind the school, but when the dust blows, the family sits in their little apartment inside our classroom, studying Miss Freeland's lessons right alongside us. February 1935. Birth. One morning, when I arrive at school, Miss Freeland says to keep the kids out, that the baby is coming and no one can enter the building until the birthing is done. I think about Ma and how that birth went. I keep the kids out and listen behind me, praying for the sound of a baby crying into this world, and not the silence my brother brought with him. And then the cry comes, and I have to go away for a little while and just walk off the feelings. Miss Freeland rings the bell to call us in, but I'm not ready to come back yet. When I do come, I study how fine that baby girl is, how perfect, and that she is wearing a feed sack nightgown that was my brother's. February 1935. Time to go. They left a couple weeks after the baby came, all of them crammed inside that rusty old truck. I ran half a mile in their dust to catch them. I didn't want to let the baby go. Wait for me, I cried, choking on the cloud that rose behind them. But they didn't hear me. They were heading west, and no one was looking back. February 1935. Something sweet from moonshine. Ashby Derwin and his pal Rush had themselves a fine operation on the Cimarron River, where the water still runs a little, though the fish are mostly dead from the dust floating on the surface. Ashby and Rush were cooking up moonshine in their giant metal still on the bank when Sheriff Robinson caught them. He found jugs of finished whiskey and barrels of mash. He found 2 sacks of rye, and he found sugar, 1,000 pounds of sugar. The government men took Ashby and Rush off to Enid for breaking the law. But Sheriff Robertson stayed behind, took apart the still, washed away the whiskey and the mash, and thought about that sugar. All that sugar, 1/2 ton of sugar. Sheriff decided some should find its way into the mouths of us kids. Bake for them, Miss Freeland, he said. Bake them cakes and cookies and pies. Cook them custard and cobbler and crisp. Make them candy and taffy and apple pandowdy. Apple pandowdy? These kids, Sheriff Robertson said, ought to have something sweet to wash down their dusty milk. And so we did. February 1935. Dreams. Each day after class lets out, each morning before it begins, I sit at the school piano and make my hands work. In spite of the pain, in spite of the stiffness and scars, I make my hands play piano. I have practiced my best piece over and over till my arms throb, because Thursday night the Palace Theater is having a contest. Any man, woman, or child who sings, dances, reads, or play worth a lick can climb onto that stage. Just register by 4 p.m. and give them a taste of what you can do. Land you're in, performing for the crowd, warming up the audience for the Maisel Herd players. I figure if I practice enough, I won't shame myself. And we sure could use the extra cash if I won. $3 first prize, $2 second, $1 third. But I don't know if I could win anything, not anymore. It's the playing I want most, the proving I can still do it. Without Arlie making excuses. I have a hunger for more than food. I have a hunger bigger than Joyce City. I want tongues to tie and eyes to shine at me like they do at Mad Dog Craddock. Of course, they never will, not with my hands all scarred up. looking like the earth itself, all parched and rough and cracking. But if I played right enough, maybe they would see past my hands. Maybe they could feel at ease with me again, and maybe then I could feel at ease with myself. February 1935, the competition. I suppose everyone in Joy City and beyond, all the way to Felt and Keyes and even Guyman, came to watch the talent show at the Palace Thursday night. Backstage, we were 17 amateur acts, our wild hearts pounding, our lips sticking to our teeth, our urge to empty ourselves top and bottom, made a sorry sight in front of the famous Hazelhurd players. But they were kind to us, helped us with our makeup and our hair, showed us where to stand, how to bow, and the quickest route to the toilet. The audience hummed on the other side of the closed curtain. Ivy Hereford kept peeking out and giving reports of who was there, and how she never saw so many seats filled in the palace, and that she didn't think they could squeeze a rattlesnake into the back even if he had paid full price. The place was so packed. My father told me he'd come once chores were done. I guess he did. The Grover boys let us off. They worked a charm, Baby on the sax, Jake on the banjo, and Ben on the clarinet. The Baker family followed, playing just like they do at home every night after dinner. They didn't look nervous at all. The tap dancers, they rattled the teeth in their jaws and the eyeballs in their skulls, their feet flying, their arms swinging, their mouths gaping. Then Sunny Lee Hallam tumbled and leaped onto the stage, the sweat flying off of her, spotting the palace floor. Marsh Wharton struggled out, his accordion leading the way. George and Agnes Harkins ran their fingers over the strings of their harps. Made you want to look up into the heavens for angels, but only scenery and lights and ropes and sandbags hung overhead. And then there was me on the piano. I went on somewhere near the back side of the middle, getting more and more jittery with each act, till my time came. I played Bye Bye Blackbird my own way, messing with the tempo, and the first part sounded like I'd used just my elbows, but the middle sounded good, and the end I forgot I was even playing in front of the packed Palace Theater. I dropped right inside the music and didn't feel anything till after when the clapping started, and that's when I noticed my hands hurting straight up to my shoulders. But the applause made me forget the pain. The audience roared when I finished. They came to their feet, and I got third prize, $1, while Mad Dog Craddock singing 1 second, and Ben Grover and his crazy clarinet took first. The tap dancers pouted into their mirrors, peeling off their makeup and their smiles. Bertie Jasper claimed it was all my fault she didn't win, that the judges were just being nice to a cripple. But the Harp and Harkins were kind, and the Hazelhurd players wrapped their long arms around me and said I was swell, and in the sweaty dim chaos backstage, I ignored the pain running up and down my arms. I felt like I was part of something grand. But they had to give my ribbon and my dollar to my father, because I couldn't hold anything in my hands. February 1935. The piano player. Harley says, "We're doing a show at the school in a week, Billy Joe. Come play with us." If I asked my father, he'd say yes. It's okay with him if I want to play. He didn't even know I was at the piano again till the other night. He's making some kind of effort to get on better with me now, since I did him proud at the Palace. But I say, no, it's too soon after the contest. It still hurts too much. Arlie doesn't understand. Just practice more, he says. You'll get it back. You can navel us with us again this summer if you'd like. I don't say it hurts like the parched earth with each note. I don't say one chord and my hands scream with pain for days. I don't show him the swelling or my tears. I tell him, I'll try. At home, I sit at Ma's piano. I don't touch the keys. I don't know why. I play Stormy Weather in my mind, following the phrases in my imagination, saving strength, so that when I sit down at a piano that is not Ma's, when everyone crowds into the school for Arlie's show, no one can say that Billy Joe Kelby plays like a cripple. March 1935. No good. I did play like a cripple at Arlie's show. Not that Arlie would ever say it. But my hands are no good anymore. My playing's no good. Arlie understands, I think. He won't ask again. March 1935. Snow. Had to check yesterday morning to make sure that was snow on the ground, not dust. But you can't make a dust ball packed together and slam against the side of the barn and echo across the fields. So I know it was snow. March 1935. Night school. My father thought maybe he ought to go to night school, so if the farm field If the farm failed, there'd be prospects to fall back on. He's starting to sound like Ma. The farm won't fail, I tell him, long as we get some good rain. I'm starting to sound like him. It's mostly ladies in those classes, he says. They take bookkeeping and civics and something called business English. I can't imagine him taking any of those things, but maybe he doesn't care so much about the classes. Maybe he's thinking more about the company of ladies. I'll bet none of the ladies mind spending time with my father. He's still good looking with his strong back and his blondie red hair and his high cheeks rugged with wind. I shouldn't mind either. It's dinner I don't have to come up with because the ladies bring chicken and biscuits for him. I'm glad to get out of cooking. Sometimes with my hands, it's hard to keep the fire, wash the pans, hold the knife, and spread a little butter. But I do mind his spending time with all those biddies. I turn my back on him as he goes, and settle myself in the parlor and touch Ma's piano. My fingers leave sighs in the dust. March 1935. Dust pneumonia. 2 Fridays ago, Pete Guyman drove in with a truck full of produce. He joked with Calb Hardley, Mr. Hardley's son, while they unloaded eggs and cream down at the store. Pete Guyman teased Calb Hardley about the Wildcats losing to Hooker. Calb Hardley teased Pete Guyman about his wheezy truck sucking in dust. Last Friday, Pete Guyman took ill with dust pneumonia. Nobody knew how to keep that produce truck on the road. It sat, filled with turkeys and heavy hens waiting for delivery. It sat out in front of Pete's drafty shack and sits there still, the cream curdling, the apples going soft. Because a couple of hours ago, Pete Guyman died. Mr. Hardley was already on the phone to a new produce supplier before evening. He had people in his store and no food to sell them. His boy Calb slammed the basketball against the side of the house until Calb's ma yelled for him to quit. And late that night, a truck rattled up to the store with colored springs, dozens of hens, filthy eggs, and a driver with no interest whatsoever in young Calb Hardley or his precious Wildcats. March 1935. Dust storm. I never would have gone to see the show if I had known a storm like this would come. I didn't know when going in, but coming out a darker night I've never seen. I bumped into a box beside the palace door and scraped my shins, then tripped on something in my path, I don't know what, and walked into a phone pole, bruised my cheek. The first car that I met was sideways in the road. Bowed down, my eyes near shut, trying to keep the dust out, I saw his headlights just before I reached them. The driver called me over and I felt my way, following his voice. He asked me how I kept the road. I feel it with my feet, I shouted over the roaring wind. I walk along the edge. 1 foot on the road, 1 foot on the shoulder. And desperate to get home, he straightened out his car and straddled tires on the road and off and slowly pulled away. I kept along. I know that there were others on the road. From time to time I'd hear someone cry out. Their voices rose like ghosts on the howling wind. No one could see. I stopped at neighbors just to catch my breath and made my way from town out to our farm. Everyone said to stay, but I guess my father would come out to find me if I didn't show, and get himself lost in the raging dust and maybe die, and I didn't want that burden on my soul. Brown earth rained down from sky. I could not catch my breath the way the dust pressed on my chest and wouldn't stop. The dirt blew down so thick it scratched my eyes and stung my tender skin. It plugged my nose and filled inside my mouth. No matter how I pressed my lips together, the dust made muddy tracks across my tongue. But I kept on, spitting out mud, covering my mouth, clamping my nose, the dust stinging the raw and open stripes of scarring on my hands. And after some 3 hours, I made it home. Inside, I found my father's note that said he'd gone to find me, and if I should get home, to just stay put. I hollered out the front door and the back. He didn't hear. I didn't think he would. The wind took my voice and busted it into 1,000 pieces. So small, the sound blew out over Ma and Franklin's grave, thinner than a sigh. I waited for my father through the night, coughing up dust, cleaning dust out of my ears, rinsing my mouth, blowing mud out of my nose. Joe de la Flor stopped by around 4 to tell me they found one boy tanled in a barbed wire fence, another smothered in a drift of dust. After Joe left, I thought of the famous Lindberghs and how their baby was killed and never came back to them. I wonder if my father would come back. He blew in around 6 a.m. It hurt, the sight of him brown with dirt, his eyes as red as raw meat, his feet bruised from walking in worn shoes, stepping where he couldn't see on things that bit and cut into his flesh. I tried to scare up something we could eat, but couldn't keep the table clear of dust. Everything I set down for our breakfast was covered before we took a bite, and so we chewed the grit and swallowed, and I thought of the cattle dead from mud in their lungs, and I thought of the tractor buried up to the steering wheel, and Pete Guyman, and I couldn't even recognize the man sitting across from me, sagging in his chair, his red hair gray and stiff with dust, his face deep lines of dust, his teeth streaked brown with dust. I turned the plates and glasses upside down, crawled into bed, and slept. March 1935. Broken Promise. It rained a little everywhere but here. March 1935. Motherless. If Ma could put her arm across my shoulder sometime, or stroke my hair, or sing me to sleep, making the soft sounds, the reassuring noises that no matter how brittle and sharp life seemed, no matter how brittle and sharp she seemed, she was still my Ma who loved me, then I think I wouldn't be so eager to go. March 1935. Following in his steps. Hayden Parley Nye's wife, Fonda, died today, 2 months after she lost her man. The cause of death was dust pneumonia, but I think she couldn't go on without Hayden. When Ma died, I didn't want to go on either. I don't know. I don't feel the same now, not exactly. Now that I see that one day comes after another, and you get through them one measure at a time. But I'd like to go, not like Fonda Nye. I don't want to die, I just want to go away, out of the dust.